Everybody, are we on? Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us at this special meeting of the Madera Public Financing Authority, also a special meeting of the Madera City Council, and a regular meeting of the Housing Authority of the City of Madera. We can have roll call, please.
Mayor Commissioner Andrew Medellin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Commissioner Steve Montes.
Here.
Councilmember Chairperson Cecilia Foley Gallegos.
Here.
Councilmember Vice Chairperson Jose Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Commissioner Derek Robinson Sr.
Present.
Councilmember Commissioner Santos Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Commissioner Donald Hawley.
Present.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And if you'll rise with me, please, we have Pastor Fred Thurman from New Life Assembly who will lead us in the invocation.
Thank you. Heavenly Father, we thank you as we gather here today at the City Council meeting. We ask, Lord, for your grace, your mercy, and wisdom, Father, in all the decision-making process tonight. Lord, thank you for leading us and for the betterment of our city, and our decisions would be all for the people. Lord, we ask that you would just bless this meeting tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Fred. If you'll join me in the pledge, please. Ready, salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving into public comment, the first 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked to identify themselves and state the subject of their comment. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking the speaker to hold that comment until the item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held until the hearing is opened. The council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Ron Montoya, Madera, California, 93638, 1292 Peach Court, Madera, California, 93638. Where do we start again? Just coming to these meetings, you kind of figure out what's going on. You watch the personalities, you watch the body language. But what I'm noticing is there's no real answer. And there's terms like shovel ready. There's no real answer. Mr. Mendelin, the last couple of meetings said there's hundreds of miles of concrete for sidewalks. That's concerning to me. Mr. Mendelin, you've been in office for I don't know how many years, and there's still hundreds of miles of sidewalks. This is basic stuff. Where I live on Avenue Olive in Knox, I have, there's been a pothole there, who knows what's going on, for 3 months. It's great because it slows down traffic. Our community, like you guys, for those of you who know me, I've been advocating all of the money that we give, $20,000 to $24,000 a month to the city in a CFD tax, which caused my neighbor to go broke, and we just sold his home a couple days ago. A proud veteran, attends your church too, Mr. Mendelin. It's a shame, because during the meetings I attended, people come in their nice suits and give this beautiful PowerPoint, and they're going to use the money for this, and Mr. Hawley over here Mr. Rodriguez makes, we're going to strap up the boots regarding the Promesa place on Avenue 17. Well, you know what? We give the city $24,000 a month. And it would be nice if you guys give us a printout on what the money's actually going for. Okay? I talked to Keith. He said a traffic light's down the road. I don't know, maybe next couple of years. It's progress. But if we didn't ask for this, if I didn't come up here, and it's not about me. I'm not a narcissistic person. It would be nice if we could replace the word I with we, because I'm a proud Maderan. I'm a transplant. But if we don't come up here and say anything, nothing's going to get done. And I just want you guys to think about that. And Mr. Mendelin, it's time to resign. You look at me funny when I came up here with 67 signatures and you laughed, and I had no clue you owed $96,000 in tax liens. They just don't make this up. It's pretty embarrassing when you look at me like I'm from planet Mars with 67 people on this petition to ask you to resign or to recall you. It's embarrassing and sad. You should be held to a higher standard. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak under public comment, please come forward. With that, I'll close public comment. We have two council meetings, one of which on the agenda, item B1. I just want to make an announcement to the public. Item B1, this is a consideration of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Madera approving the new Schedule A agreement with the California Department of Forestry. That item has been pulled from the agenda, so we will not be discussing that particular item tonight, in case anybody was here for that item. So with that, I will move into the special meeting of the Madera City Council, starting with the Madera Public Financing Authority, my apologies. And this would be item A, consideration of a resolution of the Madera Public Financing Authority officers.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Arnoldo Rodriguez, City Manager. Before we get started this evening, I would like to introduce Susan O'Hara to both the council and the community. I understand a lot of council members have known Susan for a long time. Susan's a longtime city employee. I'm a little embarrassed to say I don't recall the number of years, but she was here and then she left for a little bit, about 10 years. Thank you, Susan. And Susan is an extremely capable person. Susan is currently serving as our acting Financial Services Director as of about 2 weeks ago, 13 days ago. So, it's with great honor that I'm introducing Susan. Quite frankly, we're extremely fortunate to have Susan and her abilities. She's taken over the budget process literally in midstream, and again, she's extremely capable, and she's been doing a remarkable job. And again, I'd simply like to introduce her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Good morning. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm new at this, so help me. This resolution that we're doing here is simply a change in, instead of naming individuals, we're naming positions that are on the Madera Public Financing Authority. It doesn't change any voting rights or any quorums needed or anything. It simply makes it easier if someone should leave, their position remains with the council. So we don't have to jump through all the hoops of changing all the documents that say that person's name. We can just go by title. That's basically all that we're doing with this motion. Any questions?
Councilwoman Gallegos.
Probably just a comment, Susan. I pulled up the rules and regulations of the Madera Public Financing just to get some more information about how this works. So you said you're changing the titles, like if it says a line for signature for a mayor or a pro tem, the pro tems constantly change, so therefore we wouldn't
Right.
have to change all the paperwork.
Right.
It would just say pro tem.
Right.
So, and they're only signing the documents that council as a board has already
Right.
approved and vetted through, whatever it so be the
Right.
bonds for the fire station.
Right.
And that council has sat and looked through and discussed open in sessions. And so after that's done, then the appropriate signatures will take place. A good example of that would be the resolutions we just put in place with the smoking ordinance. You've heard us go back and forth with the comments that we made, and we unanimously said we're approving the ordinance, and when we do that, the mayor signs the dotted line
Right.
saying,
It says mayor.
as mayor,
Right, whether it's Mr. Medellin or
whoever's
whoever's
at the
holding
time.
that seat can sign on that line. And that is simply all that we're accomplishing with this motion
Is
tonight. We're not changing anything
that
else.
from a name to a
To a
title.
title, so whoever's currently holding that title can legally sign on that line.
Okay, and that the decisions made for that signature is from the board that's sitting up
Absolutely.
here, all of us.
Nothing else changes, doesn't change anybody's authority on anything other than if they have the title, they can sign on the line.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of Ms. O'Hara?
So
Anyone?
one simple comment, if I may, Mayor.
Please.
How this arose recently is the city is currently obtaining financing for the new city fire station. And the new city fire station, when the project started, had identified specific people who are no longer with the city. And so it's one of the challenges that causes is as you're trying to fill out the paperwork in a timely manner, we're going to have to come back to council, and that's what promulgated this action this evening is that some of the original documents were signed or they're authorized by folks that are no longer with the city, specifically 3 of them. And so rather than come back to the city council, because these items don't come up very often because the city doesn't go out for financing very frequently, we would have to come back to the council every single time to change the names. And as the council's aware, the pro tem position's on a rotating basis. And that means we would have to come back to the council every single year to identify new people. So rather than doing that, we simply said, shouldn't it simply be by positions? But again, going back to what Councilmember Gallego said, and Susan said a few minutes ago, the authorities themselves lie with the board, not with the individuals. And I think that's the key takeaway. So thank you very
Right.
much.
Right. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak on this particular item, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action.
And Mr. Mayor, I so move to approve. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. On this resolution, are we
We'll
going to
do a
require a
roll
roll call vote, please?
Okay. Councilmember Hawley,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Montes,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Councilmember Gallegos,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson,
Yes.
Mayor Medellin.
Yes.
Okay, the final vote is 7-0. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much, Claudia. We'll close that portion of the meeting, the Madera Public Finance Authority Board, and move into the special meeting of the Madera City Council, beginning with our workshop. This is item A1, the workshop on the preliminary special review funds and internal service funds for fiscal year 2019-2020. Ms. O'Hara, you did such a fantastic job the first time. We're going to bring you back again.
Okay. Well, previously, we have presented a workshop on the general fund and the enterprise funds. There was a workshop prior to that on the CIP budget. We just have a couple of last pieces to go over with you tonight. This should be pretty quick. And those 2 pieces are the special revenue funds and the internal service funds. So special revenue funds are monies that we receive from various different sources, but that come with a specified intent. So if we get grant money that we have to spend specifically on repairing streets, or we get gas tax money that we have to spend specifically on repairing roads, or Measure T is another example of a tax that has specific restrictions to how that money can be spent. Legally, we have to hold those funds in their own little bank account so we can track how we spend them. So, like I said, these funds come from multiple different sources. My intent here tonight is not so much to try to put on paper dollars and cents for this year, because most of these projects are multi-year projects. The funding part of those projects, I think, has already been presented to you in CIP, but what I thought maybe might be helpful is a little discussion on where this money comes from and who gives it to us and what its purpose is. So that's more my intent tonight. This is just a little chart of the different special revenues that we receive. I kind of grouped them together. We're going to go into a little more detail on what's in these groups, but you know, there's multiple different developer impact fee funds. So if I were to list them all, we'd be here for multiple charts. So I kind of grouped those all together, and the funding that we get for transit, there's several different pieces of that. So I've kind of grouped them all together here just for display purposes, but we're going to go through them a little more thoroughly. So this is this year's money, and this is a preliminary, because this is one of those things that changes daily. Like I think we just a couple of nights ago found out that we had been awarded a grant, so we kind of frantically added it to the totals on the staff report that we were doing, because I think we found out that day that we were getting that. So these numbers may change before we actually go to print, because there's lots of moving parts here, and we're getting awards, you know, as they come in. We'll add them to the budget. But and the one note here is landscape maintenance districts are part of the special districts. I don't know if any of you, I know Cece you have, but if any of you have sat down and looked at the landscape maintenance districts, it's a ton of accounting. And we're still doing some of that accounting because due to people moving to different departments, and we're just still gathering the data on that. So actually, I think we finally have the final numbers, and they will be in the final budget presentation when we present that in a couple of weeks. But just to go through some of these different revenues that we receive in, special gas tax for street maintenance. Its sole purpose is for to support street operations and projects. So the special gas tax pretty much funds our streets department and whatever projects they have going on as far as repaving and pothole repair and that type of thing. So most of that, the functions in the streets department are funded by a direct transfer of gas tax money into that department. Then there's the RSTP, which stands for Regional Surface Transportation Exchange. That funding is for bridges and tunnel projects on pedestrian roads, pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and intercity passenger projects. So again, pretty specific things that money can be spent on. So when engineering's setting up their different projects for the year, that's the funding that they tap into depending on what the project is. And so what I tried to do here is reference the projects that are currently using those funds. Apparently, I didn't realize that your CIP documentation that you got last week starts with next year, so some of these projects maybe weren't in there. So if you need a little more detail on that, we can get you that. But so I was just trying to demonstrate that, you know, we get all these pots of money in, and this is where they're feeding into, and it's a multi-year process. The STP funding is also a multi-year program, and that's state highway system funds. So those are, you know, again, a lot of this is street repairs. And that money comes in, let's see, I guess there's we don't have any projects scheduled for that, so we must not have any current year funding for that, but that's another form of funding that we get for street repairs. Prop 1B, the SLPP, is part, I think, of the Measure T tax, and it does require a 50% match. And this is a drawdown, so as we do the projects, we draw down the money. So, and that's a good point to add, that a lot of times we'll put in the budget what the total award was, but we're only going to draw down whatever we spend. So if we don't get the project completed or we don't spend all of it, you're not going to see that full revenue coming in because we didn't have the expenses to offset it. The RMRA, this is the new one that the sales tax increase that happened a couple of years ago now, maybe 4 or 5. I don't know. I lose track of time. But this is the one that gets a lot of attention. I think it was even on the ballot last year to get repealed, and luckily it did not, because it does generate a lot of funding for us to do a lot of streets projects. This one has some really specific tracking requirements. I think you've all seen that we have to submit our projects every year of how we're going to spend this money, and they have to be new projects. So currently those are being spent on three different projects. Measure A is no longer incoming, but I think we have a little bit of money left over, and I think engineering has a specific project earmarked for that. Measure T is a half-cent sales tax. Again, local transportation projects. This is one that has a lifespan that ends in 2027, but it does, as you can see, fund several of our roads projects. Let's see, San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District provides funding for projects that are consistent with their mission, which is pollution control. It's currently funding one project, and again, it's a reimbursement grant. So those are the special revenues that engineering uses to do a lot of their projects as far as streets and road repairs go, and that's most of them are. Well, I'm not gonna say most of them. Some of them are drawdowns, some of them are direct payments. So the gas tax type and the sales tax type, we get that money every month and they use it to do their projects. Some of the other funding is kind of pay as you go. So we have to put the money out and then we get the money back. Transportation or transit, I think everybody knows we're building a new transit facility. So this money is pretty much all tied up in getting that going. We get some Prop 1B, Public Transportation Modernization Improvement, and this is the one I can never say, PTMISEA. I think I finally got it, but I never knew what that stood for. So this is funding part of our transit facility, as well as some LC-TOP money and some LTF money, I think, is going into. The LTF has a lot of purposes. It can be parks, it can be streets, it can be bicycles. So we have quite a few projects. I didn't even list them because there were so many using the LTF funding. But again, and I think part of the CIP project, they went through pretty thoroughly what that LTF money was being used on. We have a Sustainable Communities grant that purpose is to create, maintain, and integrate multimodal transportation. It's funding, again, the transit facility. It's another one of the sources that we're using to build that facility. I'm pretty excited about it. It sounds like it's going to be beautiful. In the Parks Department, I think we only currently have the HRPP funding going on and maybe a little bit of the Chick-Chancey grant left. And those are funding a couple of parks projects. Development impact fees is a big one. And again, there's a whole slew of them. I didn't stop to count them, but there's quite a few development impact fees. But for anybody that doesn't know, most of these are collected through our permitting process. And so if somebody wants to come into town and build a new building, they have to help us pay for the infrastructure that's going to be needed to support that. And we have quite a list of different little pots of money, little fees, then those fees goes into those pots of money. And so, for instance, if we need a new well on the other side of town, that's a big one. Everybody has to do their part to contribute, and then once we have the money saved up, we put in a new well. So if anybody needs further detail on those, come see me one afternoon and we can go through it. But it's a lot of little detailed information that I think overall we can see that quite a bit of money comes in from a little over $2 million.
Councilman Garcia.
Pardon me?
Councilman Garcia has a question.
Yes, at some point, I'd like to have a conversation regarding development, the impact fees.
We have actually discussed doing a separate workshop on development impact fees. I think we're in possession of a study that was done, but we've just received it. So once we wrap our heads around what's in that study, we have on our list of things to do is to do a workshop on that, because I know there's a lot of questions about what comes in and what goes out and what we're using it for.
And your list has grown considerably since we first started talking about this, so
I
I
have
appreciate
a really
that.
long list.
I appreciate that. So if you could just
No, but I
reach
think
out at some point.
information is powerful, and I'm more than happy to educate or inform or whatever. But I think development impact fees is a really good one to spend a whole workshop on. It's a lot to go over in this venue, but we can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Okay, special districts. We have the parking district and the business improvement district downtown, which are assessments that I don't know if that's a good word, but they're fees that people that do business or own businesses in the downtown district are assessed for maintaining the parking structures, the parking lots that are in that area. And then the business improvement district, the intent of that is to provide some money to promote downtown, promote some tourism, promote activities, help fund some of the activities, kind of to draw people downtown to support the businesses that are down there. So both of those assessments are billed through the city, and then for the business improvement district, the city remits the funds to the Downtown Business Association, I think it's called, quarterly, so that they can use it to promote different activities in that area.
Susan, Mayor Pro Tem Montes has a question.
Yes, Mayor. So I'm looking at this graphic here that I think everybody else is looking at, and we have a difference for the special districts, and this is what we're talking about $900,000.
That's where the LMZs, landscape maintenance districts reside, and I don't have the current year numbers for that yet. That's why there's
That's the difference. I see it was taken out. Okay.
Because the last year's totals are in there, but the current year or the next year's
Yeah.
totals are not. So I will have that updated by the time we present the final budget. But again, it's 80 different zones, and they all have expenses and revenues that have to be calculated. And I think we at this point have all of the information, but I didn't have an opportunity to get it in this slide for tonight.
It seemed like a large number for the landscape, $1 million a year, right? That's year over year. I mean, trying to get
I don't know that it's,
might be something else, right? It's not just the LMDs.
let me see. Let me see what the total is. I don't think I did just revenues. Yeah, I don't have a total by revenues for the LMZs.
It is quite a bit.
I can get you that information. It's
We can get that information
Yeah.
later. I was just.
I can get it for you, but it's quite a bit of money. There's 80 different zones, and some of them are very large, so they generate large
revenue.
amounts of assessments.
Councilman Rodriguez has a question.
And along those lines, Susan, with regards to the LMDs, I know there's 80 different accounts. Has there been conversation about possibly consolidating? Can we consolidate any of those? And, I mean,
Do you want me to defer to you on that answer? I know there's
and
been
if that's a question,
discussion.
only because it was asked, we were on that topic, but if it's not something that you can answer today, maybe.
I know there's some legalities to, again, they're special revenues, and we have to keep the monies separate for each district. And I know there are some legalities as far as what we can combine and what we can't, and I know Keith is working on that project. Do you want to speak to that at all?
I'll speak to it a little bit. Yes, it is our plan to go ahead and look at consolidating several zones. The ones we were looking at is what was directed by council. I'd say over 2 years ago. It's zones 10I through 10G. 10 through 10I, something like that. It's like 8 zones. What that entails is we actually have to pull all the property owners into a vote and seek their approval. So we haven't been able to go ahead and get to that given the current resources and our ability to go ahead and get there, but I have hopes to go ahead and get there next year. I have a new administrative analyst coming on board, and we're going to go ahead and take a shot at it. If we're successful, it represents a savings to the city in terms of efforts, because Susan is accurate. It's a lot of effort to go ahead and work through 80 zones and then go ahead and manage them in the field. Many of the zones share the cost. For instance, one zone might have 3 or 4 different subdivisions sharing in the cost on it, but another zone might have 2 of those zones and 3 new ones. So trying to go ahead and figure out how those blend is difficult. It's difficult at the spreadsheet level doing it on the computer. It's even more difficult, I think, in the field. And John Scarborough has come up with a method to do that, and I think he's been quite successful in doing that.
So, I mean, future consolidation is.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry,
good, thank you.
I was a little bit long-winded.
No, that's fine.
Or a lot
No,
long-winded.
that's good detail, thank you.
And I think that was one other topic that we talked about, maybe doing a little workshop on, now that we have few more resources to do that. But that's another lengthy list of, that's a whole nother meeting in itself also. So that's on our list. And then the CFDs are also included in the special districts and, as I mentioned, the landscape maintenance districts. So, And then we get down to federal aid. We have several different sources of federal aid. We have an active transportation program, bridge preventative maintenance, congestion mitigation and air quality program, or CMAQ, and highway safety improvement program. And all of those, again, have specific things that we can spend them on, and so they are captured in a special revenue fund, and they're used to fund the projects that are listed there, and probably more for next year. Housing has grant money, mostly down payment assistance and rehabilitation. This was one of the grants that was a last minute addition. How much was your new DAPA grant? $500,000. And what that does is it gives us the ability to help people in the community with down payment assistance on their first home. And so there's several different accounts. There's home and Cal Home, and there's manufactured housing rehabilitation and owner occupied rehabilitation. So there's several different funds in this group. And the cool thing, but kind of the accounting nightmare part of it too, is that as people are paying that money back, we get to put that back into a fund so we can reloan it out, but it's got to be a different fund, and there's different rules and percentages. And yeah, we've spent a lot of time hashing out the home grants because, again, a lot of accounting involved in meeting the rules of some of those grants. But yeah, I think Yvette was super excited. They got that new grant at the last hour there, so we were able to add that in. And then law enforcement has several grants under the law enforcement category there. They have the SLUSF grant and the JAG grant. They also have a COPS grant and that didn't make the cut here, a COPS grant and a tobacco. Can't remember if there's another word in there. Tobacco grant for underage smoking campaigns, advertising, and sting operations and that kind of thing. So again, some of those grants have specific things that they can be spent on, so they're tracked in the special revenue funds. Not all grants end up in special revenue funds if they're just support grants. Here's some grant money to run your operation. Those get plugged in at the fund level, so PD or grants or whatever, the parks has some of those. They're not required to be tracked separately because they're just support grants, so they can spend them on salaries or program supplies or whatever they need to. So not all grants are going to show up in your special revenue funds, only the grants that have specific criteria for how they can be spent. Okay, so are there any questions on special revenue funds?
Doesn't seem like it. Moving right along.
Okay, so our other category of funds that we need to talk about are internal service funds. Internal service funds are pots of money that help provide services to the internal organization. And we have 3 different departments that do that. We have facilities, we have fleet, and we have information services. And again, my intention here tonight is to maybe share a little information on how those departments go about divvying up their budgets. Because in a perfect world, their revenues would match their expenses most of the time. The only time that's not true is in the equipment replacement. And I'm going to let Randy and Mark kind of go through their part of the description of how they put their budgets together, what they spend money on, and how they allocate those costs out to the departments in the city. Facilities is pretty basic. Facilities has 2 functions. They do routine maintenance for the city's buildings and facilities, and they maintain street signals and street lights. So a portion of that street signal and street lights operation is funded by Measure T. So we take their entire budget and we minus out the items that Measure T pays for, and they pay for a portion of an engineer's salary. So we minus that all out, and then the remaining is allocated across the city based on, we did a time study last year. We were doing it just on square footage, but Public Works people were moving around, and there was, even over here, people were moving around. So we actually decided it might be a little more cost effective if we did a time study to find out where they're really spending their time, because you could have a really big department here in City Hall, but facilities comes, twice a year to change a light bulb. So they actually did a time study, and so we've used that time study along with some of the square footage philosophy to allocate that time across the rest of the city. So their budget zeroes out. They get Measure T money, and then we charge the departments for the rest of their expenses, and so there's a zero out. Fleet and computer works a little differently because they have two different parts. They have the service part, and then they have the equipment replacement part, and both of them are here to talk about that. So I'm going to let Randy come up first and talk about his fleet budget.
Good evening. I'm Randy Collum, the Fleet Operations Manager. And the Fleet Department is basically composed of three sections, three areas. So there's the maintenance, the replacement, and then a motor pool. So the maintenance section of it is where we really do all the repairs and things. So this is going to be your oil changes, your brakes, tires, hoses, those types of things. That's where all that gets done in that section. The budget has stayed basically the same, although costs are always increasing as far as parts, tires, outside services, those things. We've tried to keep those relatively the same by increasing efficiencies, extending oil changes, and with a little bit of staff reduction. So that department has stayed pretty static the way as far as that goes. I don't know how we have this laid out here. This is for the replacement. Okay. The replacement fund is basically used to replace the equipment. So it has a few sections in there. The biggest one obviously is acquisition costs, and that really goes up every year just because vehicle prices, equipment prices, they go up every year, and so that just gets reflected in what we're purchasing. On the other side of that, the expense side, that will vary year to year depending on what we're buying. If we're buying pickups one year, you're $25,000 a year. If you're buying a street sweeper, you're $250,000. A Vector's $350,000. So that number vary depending on what equipment we're replacing on an annual basis. And then there's a little bit more information here in a PowerPoint that I'll do here right after I finish motor pool. So motor pool is the last section in there. We started this about a year and a half ago. Obviously, the purpose of that is to reduce costs by getting rid of underutilized vehicles. And what we've done there is it increases usage, it shares the costs across departments, and we have obviously fewer vehicles to maintain and purchase. So when we put this program together, there were 4 vehicles in different departments at City Hall. We reduced that to 2 vehicles. In Public Works, we had 5 over there, and we reduced that to 3. And then in Fleet and Recreation, we had 4 vans, and we reduced that to 2. So we went from 13 down to, to 6. So we reduced 6 vehicles down to 7. So that's almost a 50% reduction in vehicles that we have to maintain, purchase, all those type of things. So that's been a good program, and hopefully we can continue that. So I was asked to give just a little bit more information on the replacement fund, on how that works. And so I'll go through that here. Obviously, advantages is we can schedule replacement dates. So instead of departments having to come up with funds, huge funds like the $250,000 or $350,000 in one year, is spread across all the years. So that way we can replace things when we need to. The departments will have a defined contribution every year, so that helps with their budgets. So instead of fluctuating from year to year, $250,000 one year, nothing the next 4, 5, 6 years, we've spread that out across all the years and makes it even for the different departments there. And obviously it makes my job easier too. So basically the way it works is we take each class of equipment, so like pickups, cars, backhoes, dump trucks, and we need to assign a useful life. So a pickup, we say we can get 15 years out of, dump truck maybe 20, lawnmowers probably 10. And so we take that, we take the price of a new vehicle, and we divide it over that, allocate that cost over those years, and that's what we charge the different departments. Purchases, the way we do purchases is the fleet. We sit down as a group and go through all the equipment and say, hey, what's good, what's bad, what's ugly, and we try and compare that to what we had scheduled. If stuff's going to be good, we'll postpone it a year or 2 years, whatever we can do. If something's really bad, we're going to have to put a lot of money into it. We may move that up. But this program allows us to do that without affecting the departments greatly. So here's an example. Department A has a half-ton pickup, expected to last 15 years at a cost of $22,500. So we're going to charge them $1,500 a year over the life of that pickup. A mower, 10 years, costs $25,000. So we're going to say that's going to be $2,500 a year. So we charge the department $4,000 a year. That's their cost. So there, we estimate 10 years, mower is going to be $25,000, pickups $22,500. So this is their cash flow for that department. So the department budget sees the $4,000 a year every year, all the way straight through. My department fleet, as we need equipment on the different years, then we'll purchase that. So in year 10, the lawnmower is $25,000, 15, year 15, $22,500, and then it just keeps a rotating balance. So my job is just to make sure that there's balance, fund balance in there, and that way the departments, it's just set for them. It makes it easier for their budgeting. And that's it. Any questions on that?
Randy, thank you very much for that. Any questions? Councilwoman Gallegos.
Randy, I had one question. We talked a while back about CNG vehicles and how we were getting funds to help purchase those vehicles to the city. Do we have anything else out there that we're looking to help us purchase vehicles with a match?
The street sweeper we just bought has CMAQ funds in it, so that helps quite a bit. Not last year, but the year before, we bought 4 CNG pickups using the San Joaquin Valley air quality grants. And so they allow up to $20,000 per vehicle. And so we got 4 CNG pickups there. We've also done the Honda cars under that. That was more than that, was 4 or 5 years ago or something we did that. And I think this year we're trying to put in that same grant for some golf cart style things for PD and for parks and rec and stuff for some of the parades and stuff to help out with that. So we'll do that also.
Perfect. That's great. Great to know. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Montes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Randy. For the motor pool, do we do any type of assessment to see if the reduction in vehicles equals a reduction in service? So say we have 2 people who are trying to schedule a vehicle at the same time. One, obviously there's only one. Does that mean a service wasn't delivered? We didn't go do an assessment? Do we have any mechanism to kind of track that? I'm all for saving money. I'm not saying that's not a good idea.
Well, basically what we have is it's all done manually at this point. It'd be nice to get that as a automatic system in the future, but to get started and make sure it works, not to get a lot of money invested into it, it's a manual system. So we have vehicles at City Hall, we have vehicles at Public Works. So they can look on the calendar, there's a paper calendar, see if something's reserved. They can go and see where the keys are, if there's keys available. If there's not anything at Public Works or at City Hall, then they can call me and I can see, hey, there's something down here at Public Works. We can get it over to you. You guys can use that. So there's only been, in the year and a half or so we've been doing it, there's only been maybe 1 day or something where there was overlapping, and that was people going out of town. And a few of these vehicles are CNG, so they don't have a lot of range. So maybe 1, maybe 2 days or something where we were short, but we made it work. So.
And these are obviously non-essential functions. We're not like when PD gets a call. We're not okay. Who gets the car this time, right?
Right. Yeah. These are just stuff that grants, finance, things like that. The office staff at Public Works, they use it to go back and forth to get the mail. Do those type of things. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilman Robinson has a question.
Are there any plans to replace the gas vehicle with electric vehicles?
That is long-term. That would be, the infrastructure would need to be done to go electric here, and I think maybe that's part of the analysis you guys are doing with this new company on getting solar and combining that with some charging and things like that. I think in the state of California, eventually that's the way they're pushing, and that's where we're gonna have to go. So early adopters always get help on that in forms of grants and those type of things. So it's definitely a direction we can go. We just need to make a commitment to get the infrastructure, and then we can get vehicles, yeah.
Yeah, so we should put the infrastructure in for the electric vehicle, like charging station.
Yeah, that's what we would need, would be the charging stations, right.
Thank you, Randy, very much. Appreciate it. Mark, you're up.
So now, Information Services is going to share with you their, what their department provides.
Mayor, council member, Mark Souders, Information Services Manager. Information Services is one of those departments that we do better when we're not seen. If things just work, then that's what we're doing our job. Our role is to maintain the computer network, phone systems, infrastructure for planning, replacing, a lot of technical problem solving, glitches, things like that. We jump in and we want to fix them fast so that way we can get the employees back to working quickly and more productive. Digital resource management, security, virus protection, and basically just ensuring that everyone has the technical resources they need to do their job effectively. Some of the hardware behind the scenes that you don't typically see, it was 10 server rooms, 81 servers, 26 network switches, a lot of other equipment including 283 workstations and tablets, desk phones. A computer on a desk is just a small fraction of the information services department. So there really is just a lot of equipment behind the scenes. We do maintain a lot of software, the Munis Enterprise Resource Planning software, Microsoft user accounts in Office. We do system backups, again, virus protection, public safety support software, a lot of department-specific programs, and then also network monitoring to make sure everything's running smoothly and we can jump on any issues and be proactive. The information services budgets comprise two sections, a computer operations and maintenance section and a computer and equipment replacement section. The operations and maintenance, the department contributions are based on the computer user positions in that department. So for example, well, full-time users with a primary computer are calculated as one position. Part-time users are kind of grouped together and calculated based on the number of shared computers. We don't feel it's right to, if somebody has 10 employees and signed into one computer, they shouldn't be charged for 10 computers. Contributions are determined by a department's percentage of computer users. So for example, if a department has 3 employees that use a computer full-time, that would equal 3 computer users. 4 employees that share 2 computers, we would do 2 computer users in that case. If you have a computer in the back room that's used 2 hours a week, we're not going to count that. We're going to replace it with a hand-me-down that we've refurbished, something that's been used for 3 years, 4 years. Put a new hard drive in it and a little memory, and then we can repurpose it without costing us any money, or without costing us, the city, a lot of money, just basically a fraction of a new computer, and still get 2 or 3, 4 years more life out of that. So let's just, if we make an assumption like 200 total computer user positions divided by 5 computers in this case, you're looking at this department would contribute 2.5% of the information services, operations and maintenance budget. Contributions to equipment replacement. It was established to enable scheduled replacement of equipment. It's very similar to Randy's. Each class of equipment is assigned a replacement life cycle in years. The replacement cost is based on anticipated upgrades. The annual contribution is calculated by dividing the estimated replacement cost by life cycle years, and the department's annual contribution is assigned by their percentage. So for example, a typical file server has a 5 years life expectancy, total estimated replacement cost of $12,500. Divide that by five years is $2,500, and at 2.5% for that department, it would be $6,250 per year. The strategy is to maximize city's funds. The Information Service Department, we're always looking for savings. We reuse old servers for non-critical applications. For example, we're turning file servers, adding into camera servers. We take out the hard drives, put a lot bigger hard drives in them, and get another 4 or 5 years out of them for doing video monitoring for buildings around the city. Repurposed desktops for computer labs and low-use computers, like I mentioned before. In-house installation, repair, and upgrades. We prefer to do our own work as opposed to farming it out. It's a lot more cost-effective for us to buy a hard drive and put it in ourselves than it is to wait for another technician to come in. So in that regards, we do a lot of self-warranties on our own equipment. We'll buy a lot of computers, and instead of purchasing a 4th and 5th year warranty at a cost of 30%, we found that we'll only get about 10% failure rate, and those failures can be rectified very easily by just dropping in another hard drive or maybe some memory. It saves us a considerable amount on upgrades, but we are very judicious on that. We do buy warranties on stuff that's very critical for us and that's very hard to repair, or that we need in a very timely manner. We do a lot of competitive bidding and individualized quotes. Instead of just going out for like finding a contract, we'll actually make vendors do a specific bid and bid against each other. And then a lot of preventative maintenance. It's a lot easier to fix something before it's broke than it is to wait and fix it after the fact. That's the end of my presentation, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions, Mr. Sodders? Mark, are we solid with the Munis system now?
We are solid. We are still transitioning to utility billing, but the system is up and running. It's been running for 1.5 years, and it's very solid.
Good. I know there were just a couple of small issues, which happens in any case, not only with the software end, but I think user end as well, and some of the employees getting used to it. So I think we've gone through all the training. We're solid in the Munis system. We've adapted to it now and running smoothly.
Correct.
Good. Thank you very much for that. Councilwoman Gallegos.
I would just like to commend Mark for not really going out and getting other consultants or informational people to come in and do a lot of what you already do and the knowledge that you've brought to the city. So I do appreciate you've saved us thousands of dollars and have given the city thousands of dollars on getting AT&T on our tower. And so I appreciate and applaud your expertise and spreading the wealth and giving your knowledge to our other IT techs. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for the compliment.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the budget. As I mentioned earlier, we presented a CIP workshop on April 4th. We presented a general fund and enterprise workshop on May 29th. Tonight we're doing the special revenue and internal service fund workshop. And we will be back on June 26th with our final budget presentation for your review and approval, hopefully. So I thank you. Are there any other questions regarding the budget or anything else we've talked about tonight?
No, Susan, I thank you very much. I think that was a good approach to kind of answer some of the questions, keep it specific.
Well, and these ones are a little tricky because, like I said, they're multi-year, so trying to come up with this year's expenses it's still in motion, so it's a moving target every day, so
Sure.
It doesn't really tell you anything. So, yeah, that was my goal, more to share some information than anything else, so hopefully we accomplished that.
I think so. And on some of those issues or bullet points, like the LMDs and things like that, you can certainly send that out to council to kind of recap some of those questions. And then, of course, on an individual basis, if need be, council members can meet with you and answer their questions
Right,
as well.
right. As soon as we have those numbers for the LMZs, I'll send them at LMDs. I've called them LMZs for years, so.
I go back and forth too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
More
Susan.
questions?
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
As was mentioned before, we pulled item B1, so I will move on to council reports, starting at my far right with Councilman Robinson.
Nothing to report.
Councilwoman Gallegos.
Nothing to report.
Councilman Garcia.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Holly.
Nothing to report.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Nothing to report.
Mayor Pro Tem Montes.
Nothing to report.
And I too have nothing to report. Closed session is next on the agenda, but we're going to combine the closed session with the City Council and also the Housing Authority. So with that, we will now move into the Housing Authority portion of the meeting, and I will pass the gavel to Chairwoman Gallegos.
We'll take a few minutes to transfer bodies in the seats. Who's this? Where's this? Are we ready, gentlemen? Okay. At this time, I'd like to welcome you to the regular meeting of the Housing Authority of the City of Madera. Can I have roll call, please, Leisha?
Mayor Commissioner Andrew Medellin,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Commissioner Steve Montes,
Here.
Councilmember Chairperson Cici Gallegos,
Here.
Councilmember Vice Chairperson Jose Rodriguez,
Here.
Councilmember Commissioner Derek Robinson,
Present.
Councilmember Commissioner Santos Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Commissioner Donald Holly.
Present.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. And with that, I'm just going to pass on the things that we've already put in place with the special meetings of the City Council and refer that to our attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We do have a request that an item be added to the Housing Authority agenda this evening. There are 5 votes needed where immediate action is needed. Typically, you just can't add items to the agenda, as you know, but you can under circumstances if you meet 2 items. First, there is a need to take action immediately. And second, if there's information has come to the agencies or authorities' attention after the agenda has been released or published to the public. So if the council can make those findings, the council can choose to add the item back on. I understand from Ms. Shaw that there's an item with regards to the HVAC that's being proposed to be added on.
We have until July 1st to spend what we have left in the 2018 CDBG funds. And so the posting was made for the agenda prior to closing, which was yesterday. So that's why I'm asking for your consideration in this matter.
And Madam Chair, if the board is inclined to do it, just a regular motion and 5 affirmative votes will get you where you need to be.
Okay.
Chairwoman, it seems as though that immediate action needs to be taken, that this item was brought to us after the posting, and of course, it'll be before the next regularly scheduled Housing Authority meeting. So with that, I make a motion that we add this item to our current agenda.
You have a motion
Second.
and a second. Shannon, do we need to open up to public comment or just,
Not on this item.
okay. So with that, can I get a roll call, Alicia?
Commissioner Hawley,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Chairperson Gallegos,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Mayor Medellin.
Yes.
Final vote is 7, motion passes.
I think we missed Mayor Pro Tem or Commissioner Montes.
Commissioner Montes.
Yes.
Yeah, voted for him.
Commissioner Montes.
Yeah, oh, yes, yes.
Thank you. That's 7, motion passes.
Great. So with that, do I name that C2 now? Okay. Moving on, we don't have a workshop this evening, so the consent calendar. Do any of my colleagues want to pull anything from the consent calendar tonight?
Move to approve the consent as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a move and a second. Do we need to do a roll call, or can we just do all those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. C1, presentation of our budget. Ms. Shaw, would you like to introduce who's coming up?
Miss Sally Bomprezi, our financial services manager, will go over the budget.
Good evening.
And I have hard copies for anybody who needs one or wants one.
So this is the time of the year for budgets. So before you, you have the proposed budget for the Housing Authority. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation, and I know for some of the new people, you're still getting used to the names, so I'm going to go over the program descriptions first, which you will find on page 5 of your budget report under program summaries. So our section house vouchers are where the Housing Authority receives subsidy money, which is passed on to private landlords to make up the difference between the tenant's portion and the fair market rent. Home ownership programs allows a portion of the mortgage to be paid to eligible participants in place of rental subsidy. Program expenses are paid by an administrative fee, which is determined by HUD. Currently, we have 741 HUD units. VASH units, we have a total of 54 units. Currently, our HAP money has been running around $402,000. Our administrative expenses per month are projected to be around $52,000. That was the last report that we got according to the VMS. And currently, year-to-date, as of, I just got a report today, we're averaging about 770 vouchers year-to-date. So we're trying to keep it steady and up, and that's Section 8 vouchers. Conventional public housing are the units that are owned and managed by the Housing Authority. And we receive tenant rents plus a subsidy based on historical and regional data. Rents are paid by tenants and set at 30% of their monthly income with various adjustments or flat maximum rents. So we currently have 244 units. Our current subsidy money that we receive is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $52,000. We have AMP 1 and we had AMP 2, I think a couple of months ago. We had the operating subsidy money approved. So that's about what it averages per month. Farm labor are units owned and managed by the Housing Authority. We receive rents from tenants supplemented by a subsidy based on a difference between the tenant calculated rent and the market rent approved by USDA. Currently, we have 100 units that are considered USDA farm labor units. And these are the ones that are on Kennedy, Knox, and Lilly. Migrant Center, Pomona Ranch. This is a seasonal housing for the migrant farm workers. It opens, this isn't, last time it was May to October. This year, I believe it's opening up in July. and possibly going all the way to December again this year. So we received a fixed budget for the operating the center. So this is basically a reimbursement grant. So what we do is we collect the rents, we send them to RD, OMS, and then we submit a monthly expense to them where they pay the expenses. Currently, this year, they have cut our budget that we have submitted by about $15,000. Mainly it was in the administrative, like salary area. The same for farm labor. The budget that we submitted was cut substantially from what we had submitted. So we really need to tighten up our budgets because we're not getting what we asked for. So it's just tough. So we have 50 units over there at Pomona Ranch. Capital Fund, this is the annual grant provided by HUD to maintain and modernize conventional public housing units. Those are our 244 units. And I'll have a slide at the end to let you know what our 2017 funds are going to be doing this year. So you'll have an idea of how many units we're going to be rehabbing and what we're going to be doing in those units. The FSS Ross Supporting Services Coordinators, that's the Family Self-Sufficiency Programs, which is designed to improve the lives of residents and enable them to become self-sufficient. Program activities include resident education opportunities, home ownership, counseling, job training, credit repair, and education. We currently have 51 active Ross SC participants and 41 Ross FSS participants in the program. The Relinquish Fund is the program that is the agency-wide business or general fund, and it's funded through charges to other programs for office space and management fees, the investment income fees that we get. It's all included in the Relinquish Fund. Oh, Community Development Block Grant, that's our homeless shelter at Pomona Ranch. That allows for 16 units to be utilized during the winter months when Migrant Center is not occupied. The program has been operating each year from around December to March. So those are currently our programs. So doing a comparison from 2019 to 2020, now this is not in your budget presentation. This is just a kind of an information for you. So last year, our total revenue was estimated to be about $10.1 million. This year, we're projecting the revenue to be about $9.581 million. Part of this is last year, I kind of got really aggressive, and we had anticipated in spending 2017 and 2018 CAP funds. We had planned on getting those obligated and in contract form, but that didn't quite happen, so I backed off this year a lot. So we're going to try to get the 2017 capital funds done this year, and then we only have another year from August to obligate the 2018 funds. So I was kind of trying to catch up. We've always been kind of behind that, getting the work done, and there's a lot of other projects. We also have in farm labor, we have another capital program that we take from our reserves that we've been kind of kicking the ball down the road with that. We have planned on doing about $287,000 in capital improvements to our sites, which is like we need to do pavement, we need to do sidewalks, we need to do tree removal, but we just quite haven't gotten through to that because we've always been behind on the capital funds, and that's really, we're going to try to get caught up with the new maintenance superintendent that hopefully is going to be coming on board soon. Total salary and benefits. Last year we projected that we were going to be at a little over $2 million. This year we're projecting $2.1 million. A lot of that is due to when our rates came in this year for our health benefits. Some of the rates were very, very low, so we had a lot of people in public housing and I believe Section 8 that had not opted in for insurance, so now they are now opting in because their benefit credit that they get will almost pay for their whole insurance. So that has been an increase of over 100,000 that we're projecting this next year for the opt-ins. We're thinking that there may have been, I don't know, I don't know how the rates came in so low, but we're anticipating maybe next year they're going to come in high again, and that may change. But like I said, we don't get those until November, December, and we're already projecting our budget for the next fiscal year. So we'll see where that comes in next year. Total administration, we had budgeted $344,000 last year. We're hoping to cut that down a little bit to $332,000 this year. Total tenant services, we had projected last year to be at $5.4 million. We're going to increase that just a tad bit this year, $5.5 million, based on what we're getting in rents and what have you. So that's what we're basing it on. Total maintenance last year, we spent about $584,000. We actually are going to increase that this year, and a lot of that has to do with we're hoping to get all that farm labor capital fund done and maintenance work done, and that's a reimburse. So what we do is we have to fork out the money first, and then we get reimbursed from the joint account from USDA. 2020 revenue percentages. So the revenue, of course, HAP is the biggest revenue percentage, which is at 50.1%. Tenant rents are at 20.1%. Admin fees are 6.5%. Subsidy money is 9.9%. Grants are 6.2%, and other revenue is 7.2%. Our admin fees, we have gotten a cut in our admin fees to administer. We get an administrative support services for Pomona Ranch, which they cut us this last year by about $2,500. We also, Yosemite Manor that we used to receive around $4,200 a month as a management fee. That's been cut down to $3,875 a month. So our fees are getting cut. And Yosemite Manor, because there was a projection based on what the rents were supposed to be at certain times in the pro forma, we just haven't reached those rents, and it's really difficult to raise the rents on the seniors. So they're kind of stagnant. So our portfolio hasn't grown as we had anticipated that it was going to grow. Administration expenses, public housing and capital fund grants make up 33% of our administration expense. Our supporting services grants is 4%. Our farm labor is 16%, Pomona Ranch is 5%, Housing Choice Voucher is 33%, and CDBG grant is 9%. We didn't change any of the percentages this year as far as what we charge with admin for Ms. Shaw's and my staff and myself. We kind of changed them a lot last year because we had a lot of Ms. Shaw's salary going into Section 8, and because we only have a limited amount of administrative funds that we can go against that, we kind of had to reallocate that. I would say public housing gets hit, as you can see, the biggest amount, public housing and Section 8. All right, total salary and benefits make up of public housing of 43%, housing choice vouchers is 23%, CBDG is only 2%, the FSS and Ross grant make up about 6%, farm labor is about 19%, and Pomona Ranch is 7%. Okay, so if you turn to page 2, you'll see the budget program summary. Now this takes all the funds and rolls them up together. And then I just kind of want to explain how your budget book is laid out. So we're anticipating this year a net income of about $331,000. I believe last year was around $250,000. So we're anticipating a little bit of an increase this year on the budget program summary. So if you go to page 3, I'm kind of going to go over the highlights of what has changed in the budget from last year to this year. So our HAP contribution and admin fees have increased by about 95,000 from 2018, 2019, and this is totally based on HUD funding, based on the proposed funding estimates again this year, and we're estimating it at 99.7. That's what it was last year, and it's like a moving target because it changes every month depending on what we have in landlord payments and what we're, how many vouchers we have out, and so it changes. That's why we're trying to be better in forecasting with VMS, and I think going through the last audit that we did from the HUD people that we're working on a tool now that hopefully we can do a little bit better forecasting for that. Our operating subsidy money is actually a decrease by 23.5 based on 2019 eligibility report and prorations. So we don't get the total. So what we submitted is what we need in subsidy, but that's not what we get. Sometimes we get 92%. It's been as low as 88%. So we'll only get. So I based it on what last year's was, which I believe was like 92%.
And Sally, that number fluctuates.
Yep.
Because why?
Based on occupancy, based on rents, mainly occupancy.
REACT scores?
REACT scores, it fluctuates. Utility is a big part of it, UEMs. We have to submit with that what our utility expenses are. So if our utility expenses go up, it changes that number. So there's a lot of moving pieces that go into the operating subsidy calculation.
My point is, some things are beyond our control.
Yes.
Others are not.
Yes. This and Section 8, it's, it changes every day. I think we get on an average 2 to 3 notifications from HUD having to do what our admin is going to be now for the next 3 months. And it changes. It changes based on what our reserves are, what we've spent, what our landlord payments are, and it's just ever changing.
And it is what it is.
It is what it is.
I get that. It comes down from HUD. We have to deal with it and make adjustments. Utility rates, it is what it is. We have no control over what PG&E, but there are some things, as I mentioned before, that we as an organization can control, at least control better than what we have in the past,
right,
to give ourselves a little bit better of an advantage and be in the 90 percentile versus the 80s.
Yeah.
That was all my point.
Capital Fund Program projected decrease, and I'm basing this on the amount of money that will be obligated and dispersed by the end of fiscal year end 2020. Because we have until August 15th of 2020 to obligate and disperse that 2018 cap fund money. And it's a big amount. I don't think we're going to get there. We have a lot that we need to focus on this year's capital fund, but we also need to focus on the capital projects that we have kicked down the road for farm labor. Those are big projects that we need to get down. I think it's been 3 years in a row now. I've been rolling forward the capital. And one of these days they're going to say, you didn't get it done last year, you didn't get it done the year before. They could deny it because they have to approve all those capital projects. So we need to focus on that next year and get the pavement redone, crack sealed, whatever it needs to be done. We need to do some work to the sidewalks. We finally got the lighting project done. That was a capital improvement we hadn't planned on doing, but we did, and it did come out of that joint account. So that finally I sent for reimbursement after almost a year. So we'll get reimbursed for that. So my focus is when the new maintenance person comes on board, we need to take care of the 2017 capital fund, but we also need to start the farm labor. And it's the same process we have to go through as we have to do. We have to, do the environmentals. We have to do, go send it out to bid and get the contractors. So
Sally, if I may interrupt for a moment, what I'd like you to know that's important for you to know is when both Sally and I came aboard, they were already behind. In fact, one of the first things I did when I came aboard was renegotiate to get money back. Money had been taken like the year before I came in. So I did work out deal with them that we would be on track within a certain number of years. I think we are part of what we're going to discuss under C2 has to do with that. But I don't want you to think that we've just let it go. It's always been behind, and I think we've done a good job of catching up so that we're at 2017. But we intend to make 2018 and 2019, whatever monies come in, be on time.
Ms. Shaw, so you said you came in and we were already behind. How far behind were we when you came in? Were we
About 2 years.
So we're doing 2015 improvements at the time?
At the time, yes.
And that is true, and that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. But I want to ask a couple of questions, for either for you, Sally, or Linda. Is it only because we don't have a maintenance superintendent that we have not? It goes beyond that?
No, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the CAP fund projects not being accurately projected back in 2012, I believe it was. And it goes beyond the fact that we haven't always contracted the way we were supposed to, using the procurement processes that we use now to get the work done. So the work sort of, what's a Catholic word, in limbo. I'm sorry. The project stood in limbo for a long period of time. And like I said, one of the first things I did when I came was to recoup money back from HUD and start moving forward on the projects. And Sally's been a great help in that regard.
Thank you very much for that.
When we went to the EPIC program, which I believe is the second year now, we had to actually change the way, because I think you remember we submitted the annual report updates, and it just had generalized numbers of what we thought we were going to do. Well, now we have to put into EPIC what properties are going to be affected. So we have to really go out and get some estimates before we even submit that annual, and we have to project it out for 5 years. So this year we projected 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So on the sheets that we have that we submit to EPIC, it has it's unit specific of what we're going to do. Mainly it's, replacing roofs. I think we have some fence repairs in there, so you'll see when we get to the end of what we're going to do this year. But we pretty much have to come up with that list when we do the annual plan every year. So we have to do one additional year every year because we already have it laid out. So the properties are already ear tagged of what we're going to do. So inventory has already been taken on the properties of what is needed. We've kind of gotten a quote, of what we think we're going to spend. And to be honest with you, the dollars have increased tremendously. I mean, we're like, I think 2019 is all the way up to like $700,000. What we did in 2017, we moved some money into operations because we hadn't drawn down anything. So our HUD advisor recommended that we move some of the capital improvement, the money that we were going to use on the units, to operations so that we can draw down really quickly. It was like $111,000, which means that we had to back off on what properties we were going to improve on. So that we've got to add those properties now somewhere down the road to another year. So, but we'll get it straightened out. It's been greatly improved in the last couple of years than what it was when Linda's right, then that Linda and I came on board. So other revenues increase of $50,000.
Ms. Bonprezi, we
yes.
have Commissioner Garcia would like to ask a question.
I just wanted to back up a minute. So you explained a couple of scenarios where we've been behind the eight ball and we've been having to play catch up. So today we passed a resolution, a motion to do an emergency because we need to get this done so that July doesn't come around and we lose these funds. So,
correct.
Okay, so we had this project, we sent it out for bid. How long has it been since we knew we only had one bid?
We knew that we only had one yesterday when we did the bid opening. We reached out to about 11 people. 3 companies showed up for the walkthrough, but only one turned in a proposal.
So if in fact July 1st is the date, the hard deadline, why did it take so long to find out yesterday that we had only one bidder?
We had to go out for an RFP, a full RFP,
correct.
and that took a lot of time. Before that, it just sat, and there was no action put forth on it. So when the maintenance manager left, there were several things that had just been sitting on the desk. So we got all of that, went through it, decided to hire a company to help us meet all these deadlines. And later on, I'll tell you that the company that we're recommending to you will be have completed the project by June 21st. But it just took a long time because of the RFP, and we have to advertise for 3 weeks, and all the stuff you have to do, check references, but we only had one, so that wasn't so bad.
I think what Commissioner Garcia is trying to say is that we knew these monies were going to be expired. Why weren't we doing an RFP 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago? That's what I think he's asking.
Well, I think because I'm trying to figure out a nice way to say this. I just think because we didn't move on it. I'll take responsibility for that. We didn't move on it fast enough. They sat. I thought it was being worked on. It was not. It is now. So all of the deadlines that we have to meet this coming year in 2019 will be met.
So was the person you're speaking of, our maintenance manager, he was in charge of sending out an RFP?
Yes, because we don't have a procurement officer any longer.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so other revenue has a projected increase of about 50,000, and that's based on some moore's revenue and based on what we're seeing in 2018, 2019 actuals. Administration salaries are projected to decrease, and what happened is I think I overstated projections last year because we had moved around some percentages, and I was taking historical numbers based on a higher percentage, and they're coming in a way under, which is good. So I kind of lowered that a little bit. Tenant services and maintenance salary increased by 38,000, and that's based on the anticipated upgrade of the maintenance manager's position to a maintenance superintendent. Benefits increased. We already talked about that, of about 116,000, and that's due to staff opting in for benefits that denied benefits in the previous years. We have put in a computer software increase of about $8,000. This is due to projected software enhancements that we're going to have to do, one mainly to Happy. So we put some additional monies in the software computer area to cover those costs. Office maintenance equipment had a decrease based on 2018, 2019 actuals, which was a good thing. We're not having equipment breakdown. It's really helped to put all our copiers under contract with RICO, because anytime we have an issue with them, which is all the time, they're out there and it's all covered under the maintenance agreement. And we have saved some money by doing that. I'm showing an insurance decrease of about 12,000 based on what our actuals are and what our projections are, what we're seeing coming out. Consulting services, I'm hoping decreases by about $6,000. I have dropped that down based on the 2018-29 actuals, because we are hiring a lot of consultants to get the CAP fund stuff done, and I'm hoping with the new person replacing the maintenance manager that he's going to have that experience and he's going to be able to keep up with everything that we need him to keep up for. Postage, I'm anticipating a decrease of about 2,000, and this is based on what we're seeing right now. We started utilizing priority mail instead of FedEx. We were paying $60 every time we were sending something through FedEx to OMS or RD, Rural Development, and Yosemite Manor they have to send things out every month. So we are utilizing our own mail machine and doing priority mail, which is $7.35. So that's where the savings is. We were spending a ton of money, and Alicia was the one that brought it to our attention. And I said, she said, we can do priority mail on our mail machine. So we have started doing that. Took a little bit because we were using the wrong envelopes, and so now we've got the right envelopes, and we're using the right envelopes and sending things out. So housing assistant payments, we're showing an increase of about $14,700 based on what our proposed funding is.
Ms. Bonprezi, we have a question again from Commissioner Garcia.
As a retiree of the United States Postal Service, I volunteer to come over and tell you what envelopes to use. If you haven't already figured it out, it is a really cost saving. We are universal service.
Yep.
The Postal Service goes everywhere, every village. It doesn't say we're just going to Chicago or LA. And so, yeah, obviously that was a good discovery. Make note, folks are out there using the services to compare the prices, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, that's all we use now. I don't think we use FedEx at all, do we, Alicia? So we're posting it right on our own machine, and we have the right forms.
A shameless plug on my part.
That's okay.
My pension depends.
Where were you like 6 months ago?
Are you supposed to pay a fine or something?
When we were looking at and we're going, why are we spending so much? And then we discovered, each of the FedEx came in, it was $60 to for overnight. And Priority gets it there, 2-3 days if you want to do express mail. It's a little bit more, $25, but hey, so we're utilizing what we have now.
It'll get there eventually.
That's right. We don't want to put the United States Postal Service out of business. No way. Decrease in total maintenance supplies, materials, and contracted service. I'm projecting it to be a decrease of about 39,800, and that's based on what we have currently spent year to date. We talked about the capital fund that I'm anticipating a decrease because I'm not getting as aggressive as I was last year, and we're going to spend 2017 and hopefully get 2018 obligated, and that doesn't include the farm labor stuff is not in there. That's just capital fund. Tenant supplies increase of $10,000. That was due to the increase in the new police officer's contract to public housing, because last year, if you remember, we hired a lower position, so our contract went from $134,000 down to $98,000. Well, it's back up now to about $134,000. So the only places we can charge that officer is public housing. So public housing gets hit with a majority of it, 75%, and 25% gets charged to the Moors. So we can no longer charge it to Yosemite Manor, so it's just the B Street, the 704 Greenway, 708 Greenway. So it is what it is, but Section 8 we can't, that's an eligible expense for Section 8, but there's really no need for them to go, so anyway, that's what that due is too. Utilities, last year, I really overstated the projected expense, and I even figured the increase to PG&E, which was a good thing, so I kind of backed that off a little bit, so I'm not making a mistake by doing that, but I feel comfortable with my numbers. Staff training travel, we have increased that budget by $4,600 due to requests made by staff. There's training that they need to go to, so we have increased that just a tad bit. And then we talked about the management fee decrease of $7,200. It was Yosemite Manor and OMS. Those are the only two places that we really get a management fee. So, all right.
Do you have a question for Commissioner Rodriguez?
Yes, Sally, can you go back to that slide, the previous one? Regarding the utilities.
Yeah.
Now it's saying that it decreased by $132,000 due to overstating project expense. How does that happen? How do we overstate 132,000?
Well, I look at 3 years of actual numbers before I do my projection. And then I look at what we projected last year and what we think it's gonna come in this year. And I don't know what I did last year, but it was overstated last year.
Well, I mean, we just finished talking about $60 in the postal and all that, and 132,000 in utilities is quite.
But that's across the board. That's in every single fund program.
So 132 for our utilities, though.
Yeah, that's PG&E, gas, Pomona Ranch, that water system. Plus, included in the utilities, we had a lot of repairs that were in there for Pomona Ranch that I had to back out because we get reimbursed for that. But that's all stated in our expenses. We get reimbursed for that. We pay it out, and then we get reimbursed to our general fund for that. So that was a lot of it too, is that we had some major repairs that we had to some of our systems. One was $79,000. So I didn't include that this year because it's not going to happen.
On your previous year projections.
Yes, previous year projections, not actual, previous year projections. So management fee. So if you go to page, so that kind of explains the increases and decreases. We went over the programs. If you go to page 6, this breaks each of the programs out by the different funds. So you can see where the numbers of the summary roll out, and then each of the different funds has its own little sheet, and then you also have your salary projections of how we base the salary and benefits. So capital fund projects for 2019-2020. We are planning on removing and replacing old evaporated coolers and installing new HVAC units and ducting and replacing roofs to about 25 units at different locations. So what we're spending in capital funds this next year is anticipated to be about $285,500. The units that are affected is 1034 Kennedy, units 103 to 121. We're putting the HVAC units on. 1208 Sunrise, number B, is going to get a roof replacement. 1017 Washington, units A to G, is going to be roof replacement. 327 Fig, units A and B, roof replacement. And 121 Monterey, units A and B, roof replacement. So those are the properties that there's 25 properties we're going to affect this next year with the 2017 funding. Questions?
Ms. Bomprezi, I don't think there's one question up here so far. We'll give them
I
about
did a
30
good
more
job,
seconds. I have one question if nobody else does.
I think you answered questions along the way.
Yep, that's
You did
good.
a very good job, you and your team, Sally. This
Thank
is
you.
Concise and to the point. It spells everything out, and so I applaud you and your team for putting this together.
Thank you.
Sally, on page 2, I had a question on administration. It says other, and then in 18, we had 91,000, 19, 34, and 20 projection 39. What is other? What's other used for?
Other administration. Go to my spreadsheet.
Page 2.
What's included in total other? I can give you a breakdown with that. I'll go through the sheets because
It's probably a lot of information, so.
Yeah.
I just red flagged it because it was a lot in 18 and then it went down in 19 and.
and I can tell you exactly
20.
why it went down. I just got to go back and get
Okay.
my notes and stuff.
If you could just email all the commissioners, so it's
I
an
will.
answer for all of them.
Let me see. Let me cover. I think that's all I had to cover. Wanted to kind of give you an update on where we're at because you guys ask questions sometimes about what our waiting lists are like. So I did find out that information today. So public housing, Section 8 has about 1,100. What was, I lost my notes that I wrote it down at. 885 on the waiting list. Public housing was 1,100 on the waiting list, so it takes 1 to 3 years. We have currently on the farm labor 5, and that they get placed within 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pompresi. So with that, I need to entertain a motion to approve the 2019-20 annual budget.
So move to approve.
Second.
Oh, just a minute, Shannon.
Thank you. Yes, and before you take a vote, if you'd like to give the public an opportunity to comment on the matter.
Thank you. I open it up to the public. Any comments? Almost. Okay, with that, I had a motion on the floor and a second. Okay. With that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Ms. Shaw, C2.
C2 is a request that you approve a resolution for us to enter into a contract with Jim's Air Conditioning. They were the only bid they were the only bidder to come in as a result of the RFP that we used. We followed all procurement procedures, and Mr. I don't know what Jim's last name is, but Jim has attached a check for his good faith effort monies, and everything seems to be in order. And we need to get this done right away. He can start tomorrow and be finished by June 21st.
That's quick.
It's quick, but we're only talking about 6 units.
Are there any questions from my colleagues?
We've used gyms before, have we not?
Yes, we have.
They're a reputable company. We've used them before.
Yes, we have.
I would suggest, since we received this packet late and it's pretty hefty, that if you had any questions, to email Ms. Shaw about.
And I'd be happy to answer them.
So move to approve.
Commissioner Montez.
And is this utilizing the CDBG funds that we talked about previously?
No, they're different funds. They're from 2017.
But they do have to be
Utilized by July 1. And I'm sorry for the lateness of the package. We are just trying to work our way through maintenance issues on a daily basis, and we're trying to do the best we can.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yes, I think you had a motion on the board here. Commissioner Hawley made a motion. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. I have any public comments? I see none. With those, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. No written communications, administrative reports, nothing. We're going in, we already did commissioner reports, so Shannon, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. And would you also like me to announce the closed session items for the city council as well?
Please. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a few closed session items. We have H2, Employment Performance Evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. The title is Executive Director. The Housing Authority also has a conference with labor negotiators. Government Code Section 54957.6. The agency designated representatives are Vice Chairperson Rodriguez and Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Robinson. The unrepresented employee is the Executive Director. There is also, for the City Council portion, one closed session item.
And with that, I'll move into.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's for a public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, title City Clerk and City Attorney. Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move into closed session.
And Chair, did you want to provide the opportunity for any public comment before we went into any closed session items?
Any public would like to speak, make comments? No?
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move in closed session. Thank you, everyone.
Council met in closed session on items that were listed on the agenda, and no reportable action was taken. Pardon? No? You're saying no. Did I do it right? Yes.
Oh, no, I'm not.
She's wagging her head. I thought I did it exactly as I was supposed to do it. Did I do it?
Buenas noches.
With that meeting adjourned.
I was not intentionally shaking my head.
And Cece